Hello, I'm Mary V. Today, let me tell you about my violin. So, my violin is quite an old instrument, 1790, and it's a Guarnerius copy, and a rather good one. Years ago, I really needed a violin. I was starting a new job with a smaller group, and the violin I had really wasn't good enough. So I wanted something very quickly. So I went into a violin shop and had a look at the violins all hanging up in a row. And I immediately spotted this one. And it was hanging sideways. And it was really fat. It was plump. You see how fat the back is and the front is. And that's something I really fancied for the beautiful sound. Gives a very, very sweet tone. And but it was a bit of a wreck. It didn't have proper strings, and I fell in love with it. And I took a bit of a risk. I quickly put some strings on, played them in, and turned out to be gorgeous. It makes a really, really lovely sound. But it always was very temperamental. If you put a new string on it, it was like the violin had a cold. It went throaty, and it took ages to play a new string in. Very affected by temperature. When I toured abroad, I could hardly get the violin to stay in tune. It was always going out of tune. So anyway, for an older instrument, these are actually completely normal issues. But more recently, at the beginning of lockdown, actually, I took the violin in for repair, and because it had developed some terrible wolf notes on the A string, just in first position there. And I knew there must be something loose. Anyway, they had a look at it, and everywhere around here, all around the back at the bottom there, was all loose and needed to be glued again. Because obviously the glue is very old. And so they had a good look at it, and they started getting quite excited when they looked at the label, because it's a very good copy of a Guarnerius label with a little cross on it and Cremona and everything. And also the neck graft. Older instruments do have a new neck put on them, and a new fingerboard, because they used to be shorter. We were talking about the violin, and they were praising it and saying what a gorgeous instrument it was. But I mentioned the whole thing about being very difficult to stay in tune and all that, and they said, how about changing your strings, just a complete new set all at once? And I was talking about how I really detest changing strings, and they said, well, your strings are quite old and they're not up to modern standards. And that's how reluctant I've been to change strings. I just keep playing with the same strings until they really fall apart. But anyway, I said, well, I find it awfully difficult to do. And she said, I'll do it. So took the decision there and then. And she went into another room, and I could hear doing, 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 putting the new strings on. 5 minutes later, I couldn't believe how quick it was. She brought it back, and I played it a little bit. Obviously, the strings were completely new. They need to be played in. But I could hear overtones and harmonics in the violin that I'd never heard before. And also the violin, the sound was opened out. It was terribly exciting. And the tone was changed, but for the better, especially on the D string. So I was so excited about this. Took it home, started to play, and get these strings played in. And the tone, it's as if the violin is so happy. It's vibrating much, much better. It's opened out. It's incredible. But now I have another issue. And it's an issue to do with a plump, fat violin like this. And it's because there used to be a space under the fingerboard where and the belly, the front. And if you look carefully, you'll see that the fingerboard is now touching the front just there. Can you see? Okay. So I've had a discussion with the luthiers, and they said this can happen with an older instrument after a number of years, that the neck moves very, very slightly because of the pressure of the bridge, the strings and everything. And the fingerboard starts to fall a little bit, and it'll need to go in and have the neck changed. But it's starting to cause a sort of cloudy sound. Originally, this wouldn't have happened with a shorter fingerboard and the way that the violin was made originally. Okay. So that's an issue that I wanted to share with you about if you're choosing a violin and you fancy a Guarnerius copy, looks like this, a very plump, lovely violin, very, very different from the Stradivarius type, which is much flatter and produces a much more brilliant sound. This is my preferred sound. Sweet, soft, gorgeous. But then you've got this issue of the neck, and it starts to impact the sound, especially the higher up I go. It's harder to play. It's harder to play in tune, and you're having to go an awful lot of distance to get the string onto the fingerboard. It's terribly hard work, and it's getting a bit worse. So I'm going to have to be without my precious violin for a little while and see. I think it will just keep on improving actually without this difficulty. When the neck is set more comfortably, it's going to be easier to play in tune and everything. But this is violins. I mean, each violin, according to the way it's made, can have different issues. I mean, my violin stays in tune now. It never seems to have a cold, and it just has this issue, which I'm going to deal with. And for an old violin, the improvement in it just recently is quite astonishing, because I've played it for years and it's been my sound, and now I've got new stuff to play around with. So it's terribly exciting. I mean, any instrument with the advice of luthiers, with the help of luthiers, can actually reach an incredible improvement. So, which is nice, and I wanted to share that with you. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting, and bye for now.